Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. It is that time of year again, boils and ghouls. We will be celebrating All Hallows Eve with 31 horror movies for every day in October. And I know that typically when you put together a Halloween horror movie list, it typically consists of movies that either happens on Halloween, around Halloween, or just generally in the fall area. This is not that list. I wanted to put together a list for whatever type of horror fan you are or whatever type of mood you are in for your Halloween horror night binge throughout the month of October or November or however long you go with watching your horror movies. Because I just watch them all year round, but I know some people it's seasonal, and this is typically that time of year when most people watch horror movies. So we have something on here, whether you are looking for lighter horror, dark, gory, bloody, or you just want a spooky, scary story, but you're a little squeamish on the gore. There is something here for everyone and every horror mood. Now, if you haven't, make sure you check out my 31 horror movies for every day in October that I did last year, which includes 31 completely different movies than I will be giving you on this video. I will be giving you just no spoilers in this video, just in case there is something on this list that you haven't seen. And I will be linking my 31 horror movies for every day in October from last year in the description box. So, you got like 62 movies that you can just look through. And make sure you comment down below your thoughts on any of the movies in this video that you have seen, especially my very last entry. It is a movie that I freaking love, and I don't know why I get so much crap. Like, I don't know. So let me know what you think about my number 31. I have a lot of horror content that will be coming out in October. I will be doing my fave Final Girls tier list ranking for members, as well as the horror movies that made me, and best horror remakes. And then for the public, I will be getting into either my fave 70s horror or my fave 80s horror or 90s, or I'm gonna pick a century and I'm gonna just do like fave top 10 horror from that century, but I'm leaning towards 70s. But I will also be doing my best horror remakes tier list ranking, as well as top 5 guilty pleasure horror movies, because there are some gems that are terrible, but they just my little guilty pleasure. I love a cheesy, just bad horror movie as much as I love a very well made horror movie. So make sure you are subscribed, and if you would like access to my videos for members, make sure you check out the join tab and become a member of the channel. The support definitely goes a long way and helps me to continue making this content. Now, this list is in no particular order. It's not best to worst or anything like that. It's just a random list that I put together for just great movies to watch around the Halloween season. Now, I just started putting this list together like 3 days before October 1st. So, we already some days into the 31 days of October, but we gonna just let that slide, because you can see more than one horror movie in a night. Let's just put it together. Now we are going to jump right into it. Number 1 is Borderland from 2007, crime horror thriller. This is a movie that I only just saw like 2 days ago, because I just started putting this list together 3 days ago, and I just was thinking of horror movies that I thought would be good, and I watched a few new ones, and this was one of the new ones that I saw. What happened to this movie? Where was it, and how am I just not watching it? Borderland is 3 college friends on a trip to Mexico when they come across a human sacrificing cult. You get a group of guys, kind of like the group of guys we get in the movie Hostel, but way less obnoxious. There are moments that get real stressful, in particular a great hotel scene. This movie is brutal, but I really don't feel like it's just torture porn. There is a genuinely creepy and well done story here, as well as characters you can root for though you know very little about them, they, like I said, they remind me of the guys in Hostel, but way more likable. And when I was watching Hostel, I just wanted them niggas to die. But with this, I actually felt something for these characters. I actually rooted for them. I actually didn't want them to get killed. I had way more of an emotional and visceral response to the violence in this movie. Now, it does get a little cliche for me, but I was pretty blown away. I gotta say, you really feel the scenario of being helpless in a foreign country. No cops will help you. You do not speak the language. Some scenes were genuinely hard to stomach, not because it is more brutal or bloodier than anything I have ever seen in a horror movie, but because, unlike Hostel, I care about these characters. Yeah, they're the typical like douchey college age guys who go on vacation to use women. I mean, they only go to Mexico so they can get with prostitutes. And one character even says the extremely cringy line to his buddy. She's just over 16, or she's barely over 16, bro. Basically a virgin, about like a young teenage prostitute. Yeah. But they really did a great job in the portrayal and writing of the characters to not have you just rooting for them to die, which that can be a fun movie going experience, but I feel like it's a lot more effective when you feel like there is actually something at stake and you actually feel more of an emotional response when characters die. Really great opening sequence, genuinely creepy villains, okay? Just looking at like the main two villains that we encounter for the bulk of the runtime literally made my skin crawl. I like how the movie feels a little less, or a lot less, polished and more gritty. There is a sense of realism, in my opinion, when it comes to how this movie was shot. There are moments where I feel like I am in the chase or in the scene. Great performances from the entire cast. The only familiar face here for me is Ryder Strong, who you likely know from Boy Meets World, Cabin Fever, but convincing performances from everyone, even if you are not familiar with them. Now, number two is a movie that I still remember watching at the theater with my mother. Oculus from 2013, listed as horror mystery thriller. Oculus is about a woman who tries to prove her brother was wrongfully convicted of a murder she knows a supernatural mirror committed. Classic ghost story told through present day events as well as flashbacks that all feel very cohesive. I typically don't like that form of storytelling, but it works very well here. Now, with Oculus, you will not get a gore fest here. You will not get a high body count, but you will get a creepy, good old-fashioned, scary ghost story. We have a brother and sister who spend the night alone with a haunted mirror, trying to prove what the sister knows to be true and what the brother refuses to believe is true. I love the psychological part of this movie and how it plays with the mind of the characters and in turn the mind of the audience. It is a situation of when something happens, like, is it real? Is it not? Did it actually happen? Did it happen that way? Which I feel can oftentimes not be done very well, but it is pretty freaking effective here because in particular, they play with memory versus reality. And we all know that things remembered are not always how things happen. There is something genuinely creepy about mirrors, like in general to me, and in particular this mirror in this movie and the events surrounding the mirror. Very solid performances, though the sister got on my nerves just a tad. The brother was definitely a lot more likable for me personally. I feel like Oculus could be considered a slightly slow burn, but I do feel like we have a good pace here. But I guess you could say there's not a lot of action or kills. A slow build horror that gives us a pretty dark story. Number three, Below from 2002, listed as action horror mystery thriller. Basically, Below is just a horror version of the movie U571. And if you haven't seen U571, you need to add that and go watch that as well. Maybe not during your horror movie binge, but it is a great movie. But Below takes a classic haunted house story and creates a amazing haunted submarine story. Tons of familiar faces in this one, veteran actors, so the performances are nothing short of brilliant. The story is completely engaging. I would say Below for me is top 10 best horror to come out of the early 2000s. It is very much war, military, thoughtful. I honestly don't want to say too much about this one. Just going blind, as I always say. I don't want to hype it. If you like U571, which is one of my favorite movies ever, you will like this. It's just a horror version of that. It is genuinely a creepy story for me. You'll enjoy this. As always, an isolated location is one of the best setups for great horror. Number 4, Silent Hill from 2006, listed as horror mystery. A woman searches for her missing daughter in a desolate town. Now, I am not familiar with the source material. I have never played the video game. I cannot make those comparisons. I have no clue criticisms regarding adapting the game into a movie, but Silent Hill, the movie, for me, brilliantly mixes a creepy and well put together story with brutality, gore, great effects. This is one of those movies where you kind of get a mix of everything. If you're one of those people who don't just like, you know, blood for the sake of blood, and you actually want a good creepy story, and if you're one of those people that want to see some good visuals and gore and brutality, it all mixes up very well in Silent Hill for me. Great effects. Visually, everything we see within the town of Silent Hill is literally mesmerizing, morbidly mesmerizing. Why can't I say the word mesmerizing? There is a moody, cold, mysterious atmosphere here. I love a horror that includes a pretty interesting mystery. I think they explain everything well, so in the end, you're not left with confusion, but the movie doesn't over-explain itself, which I feel sometimes is a big downfall with movies like this. There are some pretty brutal, a certain scene in particular I'm thinking of, but there are some pretty brutal moments where I have a literal visceral reaction. The best horror engulfs you right into the setting and makes you feel like you are a part of what you are seeing on screen, and I really feel like Silent Hill is effective there. You won't get the typically predictable but fun horror scares in this movie, but you will get some very creepy, disturbing imagery as well as a good story. Nothing is scarier than the things a child can cook up in their imagination. I really don't like the actress who plays Rose. I honestly, and I can't even really tell you why. I just cannot stand this lady anytime she shows up in a movie. But the other performances are great. The little girl is creepy as hell. The lady from The Walking Dead, she has a great performance here. One of the most brutal moments involve her character. Y'all, do you have actors that you just don't like? Like, that lady is probably the greatest person in real life, but I just cannot get into her. She kind of takes me out of the movie anytime I see her. I just don't like her or her style. Number 5, Devil from 2010, listed as horror mystery thriller. One by one, a group of people trapped in an elevator begin to die off. A lot more supernatural suspense thriller, less horror for me personally. This is one of the few movies by M. Night Shyamalan that did not make me violently angry. I enjoyed the main story here, and I enjoyed the little side story that we get as well. It was pretty easy to know who the culprit was, but that doesn't make the ride any less fun as we are going along. While we get an isolated location with the elevator, the story does move outside of the elevator quite a bit as we follow the staff and the police trying to solve this situation. The script is really good and plays on paranoia and claustrophobia really effectively. While you'll see the twist coming like miles away, even if you aren't a diehard like movie fan who like stuff can be easily predictable for you, I really feel like casual movie fans can likely predict the twist. But predictability isn't always a bad thing for me if the execution is done well enough. So while you might know the destination, it's the journey that makes the movie worthwhile. There are definitely some flaws in Devil, but a lot more good than bad in my humble opinion. Number 6 is a movie that I have literally seen 1,100,000 times. I remember my mama had this on DVD. Vacancy from 2007, listed as horror thriller. A married couple end up in a fight for their lives at an isolated hotel. Y'all, what do I love? An isolated location. Nothing is scarier or more effective than being isolated, cut off from any help, any person. We have a married couple in turmoil that have to come together to survive a few maniacs when they end up at a empty hotel. If horror movies have taught us nothing, never leave the interstate. Okay, Vacancy isn't anything we have not seen before, but it does take familiar elements and gives us what feels like a breath of fresh air in a slasher style horror movie. I like Vacancy because it mixes real tension and fear with some weirdo but loony villains. It's horrifying to me when killers seem to like be having fun and like they act kind of nonchalant when like evil issues going down. So that mix of like fun and terror is very well done here. You have this couple who are being terrorized, scared for their life, and then folks on the other side that feel kind of inhumane because they kind of feel like they're having fun and how they react to the brutality. Pretty typical scare setups here, and Kate Beckinsale is extremely forgettable as the wife, in my opinion. But Luke Wilson's performance, as well as the hotel manager and the director and script, carried this movie through. And I personally love a horror movie that does not include teenagers. No disrespect, teenagers. Number 7, Dog Soldiers from 2002, listed as action horror thriller. A group of soldiers on a routine military exercise end up in a fight for their lives against werewolves. I'm not the biggest fan of werewolf movies, honestly. I remember I loved The Howling for most of my childhood. That was like my number 1 favorite werewolf movie. But for me, I don't think there are like a ton of great werewolf films. It definitely not an oversaturated subgenre, but Dog Soldiers is on the Mount Rushmore of werewolf films. Coop and Sarge are 2 of my fave characters here, and there was a certain element that I could see coming a mile away with one of the characters, but in this instance, I think the twist being so predictable does hurt the story because it's not the big moment it should be. One of the most perfect mixes of great action, like some genuinely great, I mean, there's even somebody running from like an explosion, and that's always classic. But I feel like this is a perfect mix of action and horror elements here. Coop is one of my fave horror characters of all time. Definitely that character that you like and that you root for, but solid performances all around. Now, I do wish the movie ended like 60 seconds prior to the actual end. Like, just cut that little part out and it's damn near perfect. The end credit scene with the photos is pretty freaking brilliant. Dog Soldiers is yet another isolated location, and you think soldiers would be safe, but this is bloody, gruesome, over the top in the best way. Dog Soldiers is some of the scariest werewolves that I have seen on screen. Like, this is a scenario where like I don't even know how I'm making about this mug. This is the ultimate Halloween night movie for me personally. Number 8, Before I Wake from 2016, listed as drama, fantasy, horror, thriller. A married couple brings home an orphaned little boy whose dreams become waking nightmares. Now, we get a story here where a character makes really dumb decisions. Like, your decision was literally our downfall. But if you can get past that, you're in for a treat with this one. This is another more horror, drama, creepy story, less gore, less huge body count. You have this kid who comes into the home and life of a couple who are grieving the loss of their son, and the couple starts to see strange but beautiful things appearing whenever the orphan kid sleeps. But what initially is thought to be a gift quickly turns into a nightmare. The visuals here are really good with everything the kid manifests, and I usually don't like a lot of over explanation, but I enjoy how they explain to the audience what this kid sees in this nightmare and why. The monster design here isn't the scariest or best I've seen, but it is an entertaining child horror, like evil fairy tale type of story. Definitely really interesting. Number 9, The Last House on the Left, remake from 2009, listed as horror thriller. We have a married couple who gives shelter to a gang that just so happened to have brutally attacked their teenage daughter before becoming stranded. Trigger warning, there is a pretty horrific sexual assault scene of the teenage daughter. Personally, I fast forward past that. I don't like to watch stuff like that. As a rule of thumb, I typically don't watch movies with graphic sexual assault scenes, but I didn't have that rule back when this movie came out. So on rewatch, I just skip it. But just wanted to give, a fair warning to anyone who is not familiar with the original or the remake. Now, outside of that, this is a top tier remake if ever there was one. I actually like this a ton more than the original. It is really easy to root for this couple and absolutely hate the villains. This is one of the movies where you want the evil to go down like, yes, fuck that nigga up. Like, this is that movie where you are like rooting for people to get sliced and diced, okay? Everything unfolds really well, and once we get into the section of the couple versus the gang, I feel like it's done in a realistic way, in an exciting way. The husband ain't Rambo. The wife is not Xena Warrior Princess. So I like the way they have this couple going against the gang where it doesn't just feel contrived. It actually feels like, this couple from like the suburbs who have to go against these hardened, brutal criminals. I would consider this one of the best horror movies of all time. Like, I don't want to hype it though if you haven't seen it. I know people like to give a lot of flack to remakes, but this one is literally just brilliant all around. Besides that little scene that I personally don't like, it's pretty perfect from top to bottom. I really have no complaints when it comes to The Last House on the Left remake. Number 10, Idle Hands from 1999, comedy, fantasy, horror, thriller. Idle Hands is a horror comedy based around that old saying, idle hands are the devil's playground. A teenage slacker's right hand ends up possessed by evil. If you were not aware, the kid from Final Destination and Eminem Stan video also starred in this iconic 90s horror comedy. Seth Green and the other BFF, who is a familiar face, but I just don't know his name, as well as Vivica A. Fox and the guy who plays Randy, all gives really fun and iconic performances. Jessica Alba is a little blah here for me, but that could just be me. If you've been around for a while, you know that my least favorite subgenre of horror is horror comedy. I tether on saying throw the whole genre away. Like, I just do not like comedy horror. But Idle Hands is definitely a gem. The comedy, for one, actually works here, which I feel like that's usually a huge problem for me. I feel like comedy usually don't work in these scenarios. And I hardly find comedy horror that leans really into horror, but Idle Hands does that very well. That is what sets it apart for me. We get some gruesome, graphic kills and violence here. Number 11, you might be familiar with this one if you saw my community post a few days ago, because I saw it for the first time. Them from 2006, listed as horror thriller. Pretty much just a foreign version of that movie, The Strangers. A couple faces a home invasion. Now, I debated putting this on the list because I was literally so pissed off. I mean, like, I was pissed off like the Hulk at the bulk of this movie because of characters who do outrageously dumb ish. But I decided to add it because it is a good movie and a nice addition to like that home invasion horror genre. So I'm going to include it. If you don't mind reading subtitles, this is actually a pretty entertaining way to kill time during the Halloween season. It's everything you've seen before when it comes to home invasion movies. No more, no less, but it is well done. Number 12 is Come Play from 2020, listed as drama, horror, mystery, thriller. A monster that lives in technology like smartphones and TVs, targets an artistic kid. This is a good one in general that I feel most horror fans can enjoy, but particularly if you're someone who likes a lighter horror, like you one of the people that's easily scared and got to turn all the lights on, but you like to watch a horror movie, you just don't really have the stomach for it. This is definitely, it's good, it's a good story, but it is on the lighter side. Come Play isn't anything hardcore, but there are some solid creepy scenes. It's a good story. I like the monster design here. It's the typical like long finger, weird movements, hunched over monster that we frequently see, but still effective. It gives child nightmare. My one gripe is the ending. I wish they had the guts to really go there like the movie initially sets up for how they end the story. I like the more emotional element to this story as well. I like how it feels like a horror with a sort of moral to the story. Kids are tricky though because they are typically written either like just tiny adults, like way too advanced, or they're written very obnoxiously. But I actually think they did well with all of the child characters here, even the bully characters that we get. And if it is one thing that I cannot stand, it is the overused bully characters when it comes to kid and teens in these types of stories. But I actually feel like it was pretty well done here. Number 12 is a movie I saw for the first time last year, Luther the Greek from 1989, listed as comedy horror. A newly released convicted killer goes on a murdering spree. Y'all, this movie is stupid, okay? I'm just gonna put that out there. But there is something highly entertaining here. I saw this for the first time last year, and I actually just had the TV on while I was cleaning up. One movie ended, then another movie just started playing, and I kept getting sidetracked. Like, what is this movie? I stopped cleaning and just was watching the movie. Now, this is definitely not for everyone. It is like, y'all, it's batshit crazy. It is stupid. It is dumb. It is a terrible movie. But for me, I feel like it is one of those so bad it's good type of movies. Like, so bad, but it's highly entertaining. I think this would definitely be a fun Halloween watch, but specifically like a group Halloween movie night. If you have like a group of friends over and you're looking for like a dumb horror movie, it's something for everybody. The central story is extremely asinine and it makes no sense, but guys, it's a good freaking time. Number 14, The Strangers from 2008, listed as horror, mystery, thriller. Home invasion horror. A married couple is terrorized during a home invasion. Now, I decided to add this to the list since I added them. And I gotta be honest, when I first ever saw this movie way back in the day when it came out, I wasn't very impressed. I actually felt like it was kind of boring. But I like this movie a lot more over the years, over rewatching it. This is a pretty solid home invasion horror movie for me. The characters are dumb. Not nearly as dumb as the characters in them. I actually feel like The Strangers is a bit heartbreaking. It's brutal. Nothing is scarier really for me than not having a motive, like just killing folks, and it ain't revenge. It ain't like you just killing niggas. I love how mysterious they keep the home invaders in this one. That mystery, that allure definitely adds to my enjoyment here because I feel like it adds to like that scary factor. It's pretty slowly paced. We have an isolated location. We pretty much just follow these two characters for the bulk of the movie, but it's actually a situation, a movie where it builds very well. It has a great sense of like dread and like, ooh, like what's going on. Home invasion horror is one of my favorite scenarios because no matter how secure you feel your house is, all security does essentially is detour people, right? But if someone is like hell bent on getting in, child, they getting in. Like, it don't matter what you got. Dog, security system, panic room. If somebody is hell bent on like, I'm getting in there, they getting in there. And that is what makes these types of movies, these type of scenarios so frightening in my opinion. Number 15, Haunt from 2009, listed as horror thriller. A group of friends go to an extreme haunted house on Halloween night. One of those movies that I never heard anything of and just randomly came across it a few days ago while I was scrolling my Roku. I ended up pleasantly surprised. I actually felt pretty on edge and anxious in certain moments. Like, I couldn't even believe it. I was like, yo, this is good. Though I do really enjoy Hellfest as like a kind of mediocre movie that I love, Haunt takes that same premise and gives me the movie that I actually wanted Hellfest to be. One kill in particular was complete insanity on the gore scale. Truly horrific, genuinely scary haunted house story here. The characters mainly pretty typical. Well, when I say the characters mainly being, you know, scary, I'm talking about the villains. Now, when it comes to our victims, we get the pretty typical college teen characters that you get in these scenarios, but they're actually not completely unlikable. But it's the haunted house and all the different rooms in the haunted house, as well as the victims, that are the real standouts in this movie. We have characters who do some pretty dumb stuff, okay? But this is a very solid horror movie, and I will definitely be adding this to my yearly Halloween rotation. Number 16 is Carriers from 2009. Now, this is listed as action, adventure, drama, sci-fi thriller. We have a group of friends who travel and try to avoid a lethal virus that has caused a global apocalypse. While this isn't technically horror, I feel like it fits to a Halloween movie night if you're looking for something less like scary, but it is a very solid virus movie. I love how it's not like a typical zombie story here. We have this lethal virus and we have a group of survivors that we follow, including brothers and a couple, so they have some real ties. For me, I feel like this is like a virus, slow burn thriller type of movie. It's about the story here. It's about the characters. Great performances all around. Chris Pine, Elliot Stabler are here. I like the realism here as far as this threat when it comes to the virus. It's not just about like ravenous zombies and the undead walking the earth. It's about a virus that feels like it could be real. It's about survival when you are seemingly the last people left on earth. I feel like, yes, we have our just horror movies for Halloween, but I actually feel like when it comes to Halloween, there are moves for just some good thrillers. So I wanted to add some good thriller to this list. Number 17, Cube 2 Hypercube, 2002, listed as horror, mystery, sci-fi, the sequel to one of the most iconic movies ever. I don't care, argue with your mama, because Cube is my ish. 8 strangers wake up with no memory inside of a giant cube. Such a worthwhile sequel. I love how they advanced the cube design, advanced the technology, and there was actually a twist here that I did not see coming, which is very rare. I was kind of kicking myself though when I first saw this, like, come on now, I should have saw that coming, but I didn't. This is an inferior film when we are comparing it to the original Cube, but no one should be expecting sequels to be as good as the originals, but this is a very solid film. It's immensely flawed, with one character little story that they do in particular, the actions made absolutely no sense. I feel like it was just a way to add some contrived conflict, but still, overall, this is a movie that I thoroughly enjoy, and I definitely feel like it is a fun Halloween watch. You're gonna get some kills, you're gonna get some murder. It's just really good all around. Let Us Pray from 2014, listed as horror thriller. A mysterious stranger shows up to a remote police station. Another one of those movies that I randomly saw years ago that I knew nothing about. I was just like scrolling Roku and just was pleasantly surprised. Aren't those just like the best times? So like when you just are scrolling, you don't know what you finna look at, and then you just actually really enjoy it. Now we have a rookie cop that comes in for her first shift and meets some very interesting characters like co-workers and folks in the holding cell, but things take a turn when a mysterious stranger shows up that she thought she saw hit by a car earlier in the night. The story here is solid. The performances are solid all around, though a few was giving me overacting, not that big of a deal. Everything works well, but the standout here is my guy from Game of Thrones, Liam Cunningham. You know him from Game of Thrones. You know him from Dog Soldiers. Most recently, you know him from The Voyage of the Meter. Go to hell. Why? Why bother? All the devils are here. I can't say how he say it, but I love that line. That man is literally just a masterclass of acting. Let Us Pray is pretty much what I wanted the movie Last Shift to be. The gore is here. There are some really brutal, like, violence in this movie, but it's not mindless gore. There is a pretty dark story here. Now, I gotta be honest, the ending kind of throws me. It throws everything for me, but not a huge gripe. It is what it is. I'm just not on board with that creative decision, but it doesn't ruin the movie by far. The movie feels low budget, but not in a bad way. They make the most of what they have, and it all works. Number 19, another thriller that I feel like will fit well for a Halloween movie night, Triangle from 2009, listed as fantasy, mystery, sci-fi thriller. Should I just do a list of like the best thriller movies for Halloween? But I wanted to add some thrillers to this list. Now, Triangle is a group of friends take refuge on an abandoned ship when a storm capsizes their sailboat. The second on this list that is not straight horror, but it fits for fans looking for a certain type of movie to watch on Halloween. Triangle is one of those like multi-time, multi-dimension sci-fi type movies. And honestly, I was not the biggest fan of this movie the first like 4 times I saw it. Am I the only person that if you don't like a movie, you just keep rewatching it? Like, I'm that person. I will keep rewatching. Like, maybe I like it better when I'm in a different mood. Actually, I do like this movie a lot better. I have rewatched it a ton over the years, and I really enjoy it. I'm just not a fan of this style of storytelling, but on rewatch over the years, I love it. I'm on board. We follow a character named Jess, whose story starts where she's like at home, acting loopy. She was so weird, and that also was off-putting for me when I first saw the movie. She heads off to the sailboat to meet her friends, acting very strange. We have to abandon our sailboat because it's destroyed by a storm, and we end up boarding this like deserted ship. And she started talking about like deja vu, and I've been on this ship. And child, that you understand why the characters are annoyed with her because you're annoyed with her. And it doesn't help that I just don't like the actress. I'm not a fan of Melissa George. You probably know her from Josh Hartnett's ex in 30 Days of Night, Touristas, the Amityville movie with Ryan Reynolds. I don't like that lady. She be ruining movies for me. But this is just one of those mystery sci-fi type of watches for Halloween. It's a really good one. And I'm gonna be honest, I stay confused when I get stories like this. I get to the end every time and I still kind of don't get it. But you know what? It's that multi-time thing. It throws me for a loop because I still don't understand how it makes sense that John Connor existed and could send his dad back, but the dad had to go back for him to exist, but you could send him back. You existed and sending him back, but he got... Y'all... over my head. It's above my pay grade. I'm not smart enough for the multi-time dimension things. Number 20, Incident in Ghostland. Incident in a Ghostland from 2018, listed as drama, horror, mystery, thriller. A mother and her two daughters face a home invasion. All I can say about this one is I was completely blown away when I saw this for the first time like a few years ago. This was another one of those movies that I just never heard of. I randomly saw. I think it was on Netflix at the time. Incident in a Ghostland is top tier horror filmmaking. Period. Y'all know I always recommend you go into movies blind. I have just had some of my best movie experiences just randomly coming across a movie that I never heard of. I see a poster, I read a synopsis, and I just give it a try. And I'm often in the mood to just randomly look for horror movies. And this was one of those times where it worked out really well. I just stumbled on such an amazing movie with this one. I've only seen it once, but I'm going to rewatch it for Halloween because I really enjoyed this the first time that I saw it. Now, we get a very well-written story, great characters, amazing performances. The villains feel really savage, barbaric. I feel really desensitized to violence and murder in my horror movies sometimes. As much as I enjoy like mindless gore and violence and I be feeling very desensitized, I prefer a horror movie experience where I actually care and feel something about the characters. Like, I want to be affected by the violence and story that I get in a horror movie. It's fun to just like, you know, have some obnoxious characters and you waiting for the killer to like chop them up. But the experience with movies like Incident in a Ghostland is my preferred horror experience because I want to be shook. I want to be affected. I want to be like sick to my stomach. I want to be on the edge. I want to have my nerves tore up. That's fun to me. And the Incident in a Ghostland movie is top tier fun horror time. But, you know, like a sick, morbid kind of fun. If you know, you know. If you're a horror fan like me, then, you know, we there. We see each other. Number 21. Demons from 1985, listed as horror. Strangers end up trapped in a movie theater with ravenous demons. There are a few select horror movies that created the morbid horror fan sitting in front of you today. And Demons is one of those movies, one of the greatest horror movies of all time. Didn't I say I didn't want to hype these movies up? Look. We get the greatest horror movie character from me personally with Tony the Pimp. I love that greatest one-liners, greatest attitude, greatest style, greatest facial expressions. The only character in the movie who was not a complete idiot. The music in Demons, the characters, the over-the-top gore, the violence, the murders, the demons, like it's all so 80s. It is nonstop good time. Demons is why 8-year-old me always wanted gore and blood and carnage. This will make a gore fiend very happy. Y'all, there is a kill scene that involves two people like kissing to death. Like, it's the craziest death I've ever seen. And for the 80s, some of the best practical effects that still hold up very well to this day. A standout that I always think of is the visual of the teeth like pushing through the gums. So good. Demons is like that great 80s classic camp cheesy horror. If I had to describe Demons in one word, it would be epic. Number 22, The Void from 2016, listed as horror, mystery, sci-fi thriller. A cop, staff, patients all end up trapped in a hospital when a group of mysterious hooded figures show up to murder them. Pretty much, this is like The Thing meets every group is held up in an isolated location fighting for survival type of movie. Depravity at its best. Gore, violence is all insane. This is not a movie for the squeamish. This is not for horror fans that like The ones that like a light horror, no baby, stay away from this movie. Now it does get a little weird, but this is one of my favorite horror movie experience in the last like 10 years. It feels like they borrowed some 80s horror elements for this movie. The effects are great. It just warms my morbid gore obsessed heart to see movies like this. Now some of the characters irk me. I really hate when you get a group and you got like that asshole for no reason character. But the movie is still highly entertaining. This one goes off the rails, okay? It go off the rails, but in the best way. It's bloody, it's over the top, violence, gore. It's a scary scenario. The ultimate Halloween night watch. The movie opens with a pretty disturbing scene and it never lets up. Great pacing. Just watch it. Number 23, Vicious Fun from 2020, listed as comedy horror. Now, this is a movie that I only just saw because I wanted to add some options for comedy horror. Vicious Fun, we follow a guy who ends up accidentally in a AA style meeting for serial killers and mayhem ensues. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of this movie. I gotta be honest. I enjoy it overall, but I'm not the biggest fan. It does eventually start to drag as the movie goes on. And for me personally, I feel like they lean way too much into comedy and not enough into horror with this movie. I wasn't much of a fan of the comedy style in this movie either. Like, I just didn't care for the comedy that they had here. So it was too much of it and it just wasn't for me. But Vicious Fun is a great premise, and I feel like it's a very original idea. I can't recall ever seeing a plot like this, and there are definitely some good ideas and some cool stuff in this movie. I love the opening music. I love the 80s feel. There's some good gore and good violence here. Some like intestines are used to like kill another person. Just to give you an idea. The movie finds a way to be ridiculous, but in a good way sometimes. I didn't feel like there was a good enough payoff though once we got to the third act and the final showdown sequence. But Vicious Fun is entertaining enough, fun way to kill time. It's not anything groundbreaking, but it's enjoyable. And I definitely think fans that are a bigger fan of comedy horror than I am would probably like this a lot more than I did. I can definitely see people really loving Vicious Fun. Number 24, The Loved Ones from 2009, listed as crime horror. After turning down a classmate's invitation to the school dance, a teen boy is kidnapped and tortured by her and her father. I guess you could consider this in that torture porn arena, but this is so much more than that. It is extremely brutal, sadistic. The girl and her dad are batshit crazy. The story is actually really interesting, though. There are some good parts to the story, but there are some parts that feel just completely unnecessary for me. Overall, The Loved Ones is top tier horror filmmaking. This movie gives us a painful, seemingly never ending night of complete terror for this teenage boy. It gets pretty camp, pretty over the top in moments, but it is done in ways where you will enjoy it. Lola might be on my list of like fave horror movie villains of all time, child. That little girl played that part, okay? Give that actress all the awards. A pretty typical fight for your life scenario ramped up to the max. And trigger warning, okay, trigger warning, the dog dies. That is the only spoiler I'm going to give y'all. The dog dies. Number 25, Stake Land from 2010, listed as drama, horror, sci-fi. We have a vampire apocalyptic world where we follow two survivors, Mr. and the orphan kid he saves. Now, pretty interesting approach to a vampire movie here, though it tethers on boring for me personally, tethers on lackluster for me in parts, but I wanted to add Stake Land to the list. Like, I went back and forth. I added it at the last minute because I'm not the biggest fan of it, but definitely very interesting. And I do think there are fans who would really like this, especially if you're looking for a certain type of horror movie to watch. Stake Land feels very gritty, brutal, almost vampire realism, so to speak, kind of movie, which makes it interesting along with a really solid character in Mr. Less action, more atmosphere and story, but the action that we do get is very solid. It almost feels like a docu-style trek through a vampire-controlled world, if that description makes any sense. Number 26, The Dark and the Wicked from 2020, listed as horror. An evil force stalks a family on a secluded farm. Enjoyable but typical jump scares here that work well in this element. Nothing you haven't seen, but some pretty creepy and intense moments. There was never a dull moment here. I was pretty engrossed, surprisingly, with this simple yet eerie story and getting my favorite type of ending. What's the cherry on top? Enjoyable horror movie. This is one of those times where no explanation is needed. I honestly found myself watching a movie with no clue like how we got here, where the thing came from, what are the rules of this thing. But the mystery felt more exciting and less confusing or annoying, which can be hard to pull off. I very rarely am okay with like no explanation as to where something comes from or why it's here. But not having that, proverbial character or internet search moment in the film where the movie explains everything, it actually works here because I feel like the viewer is a lot more focused on the here and now. What's happening, in my opinion, is far more interesting than any explanation a movie could have given. Of course, the viewer can, draw your own conclusions from little hints in the movie, but it's pretty much left just open, not explained. The Dark and the Wicked gives us a story that is successfully haunting, depressive, tragic, sinister. Number 27 is a movie I have seen like 100 times. Gothika from 2003, listed as horror mystery thriller. A psychiatrist wakes up as a patient in the insane asylum where she works with absolutely no memory of what she has done to end up there. I truly do not get all the Halle Berry slander. It behooves me. I did a review on that boxing movie she did, and somebody commented that I have the intelligence of a child because I think Halle Berry could act. I'm not debating that I only have the intelligence of a child, but baby, Halle Berry can act, okay? Why do y'all hate her so much? We have an all-around stellar all-star cast. Halle Berry, Charles S. Dutton, the original Rock. I still call Rock. I called him Rock for most of my life. Robert Downey Jr., Penelope Cruz, and my fave, John Carroll Lynch. This is horror and mystery done very well. Definitely a must watch for horror fans, in my opinion. Gothika tackles some pretty heavy subject matter here, so trigger warning, there is sexual assault. No graphic scene of it, but it is a part of the central story and mystery. I love psychological horror. They can be some of the most effective types of horror. Battling your own mind, for me, is a lot scarier than battling zombies or werewolves. Not knowing what's real, not being able to trust your own mind, and then having to battle your mind and ghosts. That's double terror, because baby, I don't F with no ghosts, okay? I have watched this movie so much, and it is literally as enjoyable on every single rewatch. The design of the asylum, the mood and atmosphere that they create here, plus Halle Berry carrying this mug on her shoulders, makes this a must watch for Halloween. Number 28, The Lost Boys from 1987, listed as comedy horror. Two brothers discover that their new town is full of vampires. Now, admittedly, I am not as huge of a fan of The Lost Boys as most people are, most horror fans. And the comedy side of the movie honestly does nothing for me. But that's not a knock to the movie. I am just not a fan of the comedy genre in general. Kiefer Sutherland shines here, though. He steals every scene he's in. I love the group of vamps with Kiefer Sutherland here. And I wish we got more scenes like the beach scene. I would enjoy the movie a lot more if we had more scenes like that. And I wish that the vampire hunters we enlist were less goofy, more like serious, I would enjoy it more. I don't consider The Lost Boys to be like the best vampire movie, so yeah, I'm in a minority here. But it is a classic for a reason, and it is definitely one of those movies where young horror fans have to be sure to watch, and older horror fans are likely to watch every year for Halloween. Number 29, The Possession from 2012, listed as horror mystery thriller. A father starts to discover that his daughter is possessed after she gets an antique box from a yard sale. Two subgenres of horror that most people feel is overdone, oversaturated, and cliched. Demon possession horror, zombie horror. But they two are my favorite. So, like, I cannot get enough of zombies and demon possession. I love a good demon possession movie. I love a great demon possession movie. Hell, I love a mediocre ass demon possession movie. But that's just me. Look, nothing is more scarier to me than like ghosts and spirits and the devil and horror. I ain't playing with it. Now, Possession for me falls into good demon possession movie. Very solid. Nothing groundbreaking or new. Nothing that you haven't seen in the demon possession horror genre. But you don't have to rewrite the wheel to execute something really effective. The little girl who plays the like daughter that gets possessed, creepy as hell. Great performance. We got quite a few great scenes. The breakfast scene when dad is telling her to stop eating so fast. Running out of the house in the dark for the box, the entire third act hospital scene. What elevates this demon possession movie are the performances. It feels like every actor took this seriously. Now, I usually get annoyed with like the family drama angle in my horror, but I feel like it works here. And maybe it's the actors that make it a lot more enjoyable. It also gives a plausible explanation when the parents start to notice their daughter's behavior changing. For a pretty oversaturated subgenre, they were actually able to create something that isn't just the run-of-the-mill, forgettable demon possession horror movie. Number 30, The Pact from 2012, listed as horror mystery thriller. After the death of her mother and disappearance of her sister, a woman discovers a sinister presence in her childhood home. Another one of those movies that I ain't never heard of and I just stumbled on and ended up very pleasantly surprised. The opening sequence with the sister who goes missing was surprisingly very creepy, and the pack manages some pretty intense moments. Predictable but effective jump scares. You can kind of, see the setup and know that it's coming, but it was still effective. It still works. The central mystery elevates this from your average horror movie, in my opinion. The entire sequence of like the psychic girl and it's where they go, when they go, like so good, okay? She looked dead. Y'all, okay, look, let me not really say nothing. I said no spoilers. I was really immersed in this and going along with the main character, trying to solve the central question. The ending is a little too like wrapped with the bow. Like the way we kind of end the conflict, great, but the way we actually end the movie, just a little too neatly wrapped with a bow, in my opinion. But everything with that ending, like third act showdown sequence was really good. It's not gore. It's not high body count and blood here. This is one of those movies that don't over explain itself, but does give you sufficient answers to the mystery. The horror that we delve in here feels realistic, and that is of course the best kind of horror. The pack feels low budget, but like another low budget movie on this list, the filmmakers definitely did very well with what they had to work with. The last movie on our list, number 31, is Species. From 1995, horror, sci-fi, thriller. I have seen this movie 1,100,000 times. I love this movie. Like, I don't care what nobody got to say about it. A group tracks down a seductive killer alien trying to stop her before she can mate with a human. Love the ensemble cast of characters here. While it does feel like a movie that doesn't take itself too seriously, because it does get absurd, the thriller aspect, the horror aspect, the action sequences are all pretty freaking good. Especially like that third act action showdown scenario that we get here, or sequence, not scenario. Nothing groundbreaking, okay? This is a highly entertaining alien horror. I love the whole search, chase nature of this story. The pacing is on point here. Never a dull moment. It's not boring. They did everything pretty entertaining from top to bottom with this film. Not really the kind of story or movie you think too hard on or take too seriously. It is just a mindless, entertaining sci-fi horror movie. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And if you have any Halloween content requests, make sure you let me know, and I will maybe get to them, maybe not. I don't know. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for supporting the channel. I had so much fun putting this list together under stress and pressure. No, but it was fun nonetheless. And I found a few gems when I was trying to round my list out and saw a few new movies. I am so excited for all of my upcoming Halloween and horror movie content. Y'all know that horror just warms my cold heart so much, or maybe it keeps my heart cold. I don't know, but thank you so much for always supporting. Also, make sure you have your post notifications on. Make sure you are subscribed, and if you have any recommendations, suggestions for what you would like to see me cover for horror content, Halloween content, then make sure you hit me up, and I will see you in the next one.